Welcome to the Burnout Recovery Podcast, a guiding resource dedicated to healthcare professionals on their journey to overcoming burnout. Spearheaded by Dr. Joe Braid, a certified professional coach and rehabilitation physician.
Welcome back to the Burnout Recovery Podcast. This is my first episode for 2025, and I am so excited to start the year strong with you. I hope you have had some time with your favorite people, having some rest time, having some downtime, closing down all those work connections, and having some restful time for yourself. So today I want to talk around a topic that really relates to burnout and that sort of myth about productivity. The people who typically get burnout are really high achieving individuals who have very high standards for themselves. They have a great history of success, and they have those other traits around perfectionism, people pleasing, and procrastination. And the traits work really well for a while until they stop working. And that's when we see some of those symptoms of burnout that might be noticed, including emotional exhaustion, feeling really cynical about the place that you are working in, and feeling less connected with those around you, both in the workplace and at home as well. What I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to draw some parallels between diet culture and burnout culture. So let's get into today's podcast episode. Imagine two seemingly different worlds, the realm of restrictive diets and the landscape of relentless work culture. At first glance, they might appear unrelated. But what if I told you they're two sides of the same toxic coin? Today, we're diving deep into the productivity myth, a journey that will forever change how you view success, worth, and personal well-being. So I want to share a story that changed everything for me. In 2020, I enrolled in a group coaching program called Weight Loss for Doctors Only with Dr. Katrina Ubell. She's a doctor who ceased being a pediatrician and had an amazing coaching practice where she ran 6-month coaching programs with a little bit of individual coaching and mainly group coaching and some amazing resources. And it really, doing the work with Katrina really opened my eyes to behavior change through mindset work and how many areas of life this can be applied. I went in with a few kilos that I wanted to shift, and I was like, don't know if this is really worth it. And I asked the team before I enrolled, and they're like, Joe, you're going to learn a lot more than shifting a few kilos. And I joined, and I absolutely loved it. I loved it so much that I did not only 6 months, but another 6-month program, her master's program with her there. And it was such a time of discovery, and I really turned around my inner critic to being an inner coach. I really grew that self-compassion. I had a lot of accountability and support with regular coaching sessions, and I developed my own personal responsibility rather than, blaming a situation on somebody else or something else. I really found I took more responsibility on myself. And I could really see the goal that I wanted to achieve that really resonated with and inspired me. And that is so different to how I previously maybe looked at weight management from a punitive, judgmental, critical kind of way. And when I had that goal that came from a place of self-care and not perfectionism or self-criticism, then I could work out how to truly set myself up for success in achieving that goal with resources and aids that made it easy for me to take consistent action. Such a big difference. I'm releasing this episode really intentionally at the start of the year. In fact, we are in the second week of the year, and we know so many people run with intentions that it's going to be different. And yet, if Maybe some of that planning around why you want to have a different goal or maybe the same goal this year. What is drawing you to achieve that goal? And have you got that basis, that foundation of self-compassion? It's coming from self-care. It's not coming from perfectionism or self-criticism. So I did that 1 year training with Katrina and her wonderful team of coaches, many of whom were doctors. And it was the inspiration from them that I chose to do my life coach school coach certification in 2021. And I wasn't really originally sure that I was actually going to be a coach at the end of that. I was doctoring and bringing up children and still doing all of that. And I loved the transformation that happens with coaching, the empowerment that my clients get, the ripple effect they have in their lives, both personally and professionally. And I set up my shingle in October 2021, and here we are, well and truly over 3 years later. Anyway, let's get back to today's topic. I am going to now share with you sort of that comparative framework of diet culture and work culture. So in diet culture, calories can become a currency of worth. Been there, done that, seen all the counting. It doesn't work for me anymore. In work culture, you might be valued by your hours you work, the number of patients you have seen, the number of papers you have published, and that is the measure of productivity in your workplace. And when we look at that in both the diet culture and the work culture, we can see that both systems strip away our humanity, reducing us to numbers and metrics. So let's dive into the physiology of how there are similarities here. Our bodies don't really distinguish between the stress of a restrictive diet and the stress of constant work demands. Both trigger the same physiological response. You get higher cortisol rates, you get a compromised immune system, you've got increased risk of chronic inflammation, and you can certainly have disrupted hormonal balance. Now, I've got a quote here to share with you. Attachment to praise and avoidance of criticism keeps us from doing innovative, controversial work, and more simply, from following the paths we feel called toward, whether or not those around us understand or approve. And this is from Tara Moore, who wrote Playing Big, Practical Wisdom for Women Who Want to Speak Up, Create, and Lead. So I want to deconstruct some of the myths that show parallels between diet culture and burnout risk. There are so many, and they are topics that I talk about frequently. And I thought that bringing this sort of diet culture angle might have some familiarity around it for people who listen to my podcast. I mean, diet culture has been around for a long time, and burnout has also been around for a long time. So let's bring up the parallels here. Okay, the performative self-improvement. In diet culture, there's constant pursuit of the perfect body through extreme measures. In the burnout context, there's relentless pursuit of productivity and achievement at any personal cost. And so those overlap by valuing external validation over internal well-being. Next, let's move on to shame and guilt cycles. So in diet culture, we can feel guilty about our food choices. There's good and there's bad food. We can feel guilty about our body shape or for failing a diet plan. In the burnout context, one can feel really inadequate when we're unable to meet our work and life expectations. And so these both share an internalized negative self-talk that really undermines our self-compassion. It just can't exist in that kind of mindset. Next, I want to talk about unsustainable expectations. So in diet culture, you're sold that you're going to have rapid, unrealistic weight loss promises. And in the burnout culture or context, you're expected to work as a superhuman and constantly hustle and get through things and knock the to-do list, miss your morning and lunchtime and any other breaks you might have had. And the shared mechanism is that you're setting unattainable standards that lead to eventual breakdown. Two more parallels to share. Suppression of authentic signals. So in diet culture, we can ignore our hunger cues, we can ignore our body signals, and in burnout as well, we can override that exhaustion. You just keep going despite being absolutely cactus, the stress signals and the personal boundaries. And so really in both areas there, you have disconnection from your body and your self-regulatory systems. And finally, there can be really binary thinking in diet culture and burnout context. I also call that black and white thinking. So in diet culture, there can be good food or bad food. There can be on diet or off diet mentality. And in burnout, there can be that's successful and that is a failure. You can be looking productive or unproductive binary thinking. And when we look at both of these together, it eliminates the nuance and the complexity of the human experience. We are not robots. We are not like a lab rat or mouse or something that, the calories in makes the equation all balance perfectly. It's just not how we work as humans. So let's get to the practical intervention strategies that I want to round out today's podcast with. I want to invite you to reclaim your narrative and recognize that particularly in burnout, there is the individual contribution, but there's also the systemic contribution and the systemic nature of these pressures of workforce shortages, which really contributes to often the hours of work that people might do. There could be the financial stresses as well. I encourage you to develop some radical self-compassion. I've definitely done podcast episodes all about self-compassion before, and see how you can start changing that inner critic to being like somebody, like how you would talk to a friend. I invite you to create personalized, sustainable rhythms of work and rest. That rest part is so important, and the rest really contributes to the productivity, and really reject that binary or black and white thinking about productivity and worth. So as we wrap up today's podcast episode, the productivity myth isn't just about work or diet. It's about how we've been taught to see ourselves. You're not a machine. You are not a number. You are a complex, beautiful, ever-changing human being deserving of grace, rest, and genuine nourishment. The new year has started, and I've got space for people who want sustainable, enjoyable, and fulfilling careers and lives. If you're ready to get started with my program, Vitality, the first step is to book in a call with me. You'll find the link in the show notes, and I know that you have the potential to make 2025 a very different year to 2024. Let's go.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Burnout Recovery Podcast. If there's someone in your world who would also benefit from this, please share it with them. Remember, you're not alone, and there is hope for a brighter, more fulfilling future. Let's continue this journey together, one episode at a time. For more resources, including how to move from dread to delight, head to drjoebraid.com.